Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection has a lot to live up to. The second game was a huge improvement over the original, adding needed complexity to the combat, cool new monsters, and an adventure that took itself a bit more seriously. And they did it again. It's incredible. Stories trades the hunting action for turn-based monster taming battles. Your rider fights alongside a companion monstie to take down monsters, obtain their unique materials, craft armor and weapons with said material, and more traditionally level up. Stories does an incredible job of translating the Monster Hunter experience into a deeply rewarding turn-based battle system. It emulates the quick decision-making of a hunt by dividing attacks into 3 rock-paper-scissors-like categories: power, technical, and speed. And it's up to you to figure out what the opposing monster's tendencies are. If you're a veteran monster hunter, you can actually intuit this information from your past experience. Take Velocidrome, an early large monster for example. Veteran hunters will know that Velocidrome moves incredibly fast, and therefore will lean into speed attacks. If you counter with a technical move, you'll win the incoming head-to-head. Your companion monstie adds an extra layer to this head-to-head encounter. If your monstie also uses a winning attack type alongside your rider, you'll initiate a double attack, which does more damage and completely negates the opponent's attack, adding in elemental strengths and weaknesses, and the depth on offer has me simply frothing from the mouth, but like, in a good way. The monster part breaks introduced in the previous game also return, and are just as important to turning the tide of battle as they were then. If you utilize the right type of weapon on a monster part and manage to break it, you'll gain an advantage in battle, whether that be toppling the monster for critical damage or transforming them down from a powered-up state. It felt so good every time I knocked down a monster and got to pull off a synchro attack. Rather than opting to keep a monster down for critical damage, you can now also do what is basically the equivalent of an all-out attack from Persona 5. Your whole team charges in to do big boy damage. They make sure you know it's big boy damage too. You can't miss the massive number on the center of the screen. The new Wyvern Soul gauge also lets you topple and stacker monsters. The bar ticks down every time you use an attack, and it had me really monitoring every aspect of battle. In the tougher fights, sometimes I'd realize that my partner was about to break the gauge, and that would give me an opportunity to toss out like a mega potion, restore my hearts, or apply some other kind of buff. There are so many elements in play that you have so much freedom to approach battle in the way that you want to. And that brings me to eggs. We need to talk about Egg. Egg is the name of the game. Egg is life. You live for Egg. Instead of running out and capturing monsters to add them to your team, you'll dive into their dens to snatch away an egg. Sure, it's poaching, but I need egg. Sorry. This is a good place for me to mention that they removed the egg den dungeons that you'd navigate before finding the egg inside in the previous 2 games. Good riddance. The procedurally generated dungeons only served to waste my time, and they often discouraged me from going into a den to grab an egg. You know, the gameplay. But now? Call me the Easter Bunny, baby, I got eggs! One of the best parts... Stupid. One of the best parts of going into a new area is hopping into the dens and seeing all the new monsters you can add to your team. I spent so much time not doing the story because I wanted to get new monsters instead. It's a shame that you can only hold up to 12 eggs at once. I guess they knew I'd never get anything done if the limit were larger, and yeah, they were right. Gathering eggs in Stories 3 is more important than it's ever been before. Yes, each new monster hatched has a pool of random genes, their skills, that you can hot swap between monsters to build the best monster that you can. But that's old news. Now when you channel a gene between monsters, the donor monster doesn't disappear into the ether. Yay! This is a great change that leads into quite possibly the coolest gameplay mechanic I've ever experienced in a monster tamer. One of the central themes of Monster Hunter Stories 3 is habitat restoration. There are several staple monsters that are considered extinct. But what if you happen upon one of their eggs? You can release that monster back into the wild to repopulate the area, and as you rank it up, that monster will take on the elemental attribute of that area, which also completely changes its color to match. I lost so many hours of my life doing this. The process of obtaining eggs, releasing monsters, hatching their variants reptile-brained me in a way that only a few games ever have. I went far out of my way to get some weird combinations, and sometimes just to see what a recolored version of a monster would even look like. The first game had recolored monsters, but the way you did it was not nearly as fun and interesting as this. Stories 3 is so good at getting you to meaningfully interact with the environment in a way that I desperately wish Monster Hunter Wilds did. I finished the main story around 50 hours in, but I'm sure you could get that number way down if you don't spend all your time hatching every egg you encounter. I couldn't help myself. It's fun. Hidden throughout the areas are invasive species. These are those elementally changed monsters I mentioned before, but occurring naturally in the environment. You have to seek out their habitats at night and discover the secret to making them retreat. This will boil down to some specific interaction you have to force by using your moves and items in the correct way. They're like little puzzles with an absolutely astounding reward. An endangered species monster egg. Like Lagiacruz. Lagiacrus. My all-time favorite monster. Finding this egg was so exciting. I immediately restored the population, worked on getting a dragon variant. That Lagia never left my team after. Each invasive den was like unwrapping a birthday present, except you can't shake the box, and you probably shouldn't because there's an egg in there. The main gameplay loop is the best it's ever been. Each entry in the story series has made fundamental changes to the gameplay in a way that's fresh and legitimately beneficial to the experience. But outside of the gameplay is the story of it all. The Monster Hunter story, if you will. As I said before, a core theme of the game is habitat restoration, and that comes through from the very beginning of the story. Our protagonist, the prince or princess of our home of Azuria, is in the middle of researching an environmental calamity known as the encroachment. Crystallized egg quartz has taken over much of the world, killing natural life and laying waste to entire habitats. The prince is the captain of a group of dedicated riders known as Rangers, whose sole purpose is to restore habitats, bolster the monster population, and bring the world back to order. Your crew sets out on this quest, and to also prevent a war with a neighboring nation before it's too late. Most of the game is voiced and the performances are brilliant. The cutscenes are downright gorgeous, and some of the early action scenes had me dying for more. Specifically a scene where we learn the fate of the two newly born twin Rathalos, one of which is our protagonist's partner Monstie. The whole presentation is simply breathtaking. There's a Studio Ghibli-like quality to the character designs and overall visuals that is so comforting. This isn't a cozy game by any means, but the vibes I felt made me really happy and relaxed. Like the very first time the game gives you control and you leap off a cliff and take flight on your Rathalos, it was a jaw-dropping moment for me. That feeling of soaring through the air on the back of a Rathalos. Yeah, those are good vibes. Your party members are also good vibes. Each one has a series of side stories to complete that dig into their pasts and personalities. I'm glad these are here because the main story hardly does it at all, if ever. Some of them are silly, like Thea, whose mission is to track down the Gale Force Porkers, a team of Poogies that love to race. And when you find them, yeah, you actually race. I never imagined racing a pig in a cowboy hat while riding a dragon, but here we are. Then there's Cora, who had a surprisingly sad story about her late husband. But what surprised me more was her relationship to another party member on my team. I won't say what it was, but there were a few other times where these characters would weave into each other's stories that really did make them feel like a family. The vibe and gameplay of each story is different, and each unlock upgrades for your party members. They're also pretty breezy, like 20 or 30 minutes a pop, so I highly recommend you do them. Performance on Switch 2 is wildly inconsistent. It targets 30 FPS, but often reaches above that, and it can also drop into the 20s. Whenever you open the map or do a synchro attack, the frame rate will shoot up to 60 FPS briefly, and it's so jarring. I would much rather the frame rate stay locked to 30 FPS across the board. The image quality is nice, even if the resolution isn't the highest. The game simply looks good. And there's something about egg hunting in portable mode that feels just right. You can also scan the New Stories 3 amiibo to get outfits for the protagonist and Rudy, the most beautiful, precious boy who has ever been. We went from Naviru to perfection. Have you ever beaten a video game and just let out a satisfied while the names of all the talented team members scroll by? Yeah, it was one of those. Monster Hunter Stories 3 is the pinnacle of the Stories series, and it stands at the pinnacle of the monster taming genre. It doesn't get better than this. The story is a bit backloaded, and sadly, all the multiplayer features of the previous game are gone. But the rest of the game is so good, it's hard to care. Monster Hunter Stories 3 is simply one of the best games you'll play this year, and GVG gives it a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. For more news, reviews, and everything else in between, make sure you're subscribed to GVG. We have a lot more on the way. But until next time, keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye now.